again. Warm welcome to everyone joining us from across the globe for what promises to be a landmark session at NestGen 24. Today, we're privileged to host an exclusive CxO panel on drone autonomy, Vision 2030. Now, this is not just a discussion. It's a glimpse into the future, a vision of what the next decade holds for drone technology and autonomous flight. As we stand at the forefront of the next decade, the horizon of drone autonomy stretches far and wide. It promises transformative changes in how we live, work, and connect. From delivering essentials to remote areas to revolutionizing surveillance, agriculture, urban mobility, the potential is absolutely boundless. But so are the challenges and responsibilities. Our panel today comprises a stellar lineup of CxOs from leading companies in the drone and tech industry. These are visionaries and the architects of the future, driving innovation, shaping policy, and building the technologies that will power the next wave of autonomous flight. In this session, we'll explore the technological breakthroughs on the horizon, the regulatory landscapes shaping the path forward, and the societal impacts of widespread drone autonomy. Our panelists will share their insights, predictions, and strategies for navigating the journey towards 2030. Couple housekeeping items. This is being recorded, so you will be able to catch this in the days ahead. We would also like to thank our sponsors, DJI Enterprise and Sunflower Labs, for bringing this to everyone. Also, we will be taking some questions at the end. So if you have questions, you can use the Q&A section to add those questions, and we'll get to as many as we possibly can. But without further ado, I'd like to introduce our esteemed panelists, and I'd like to invite them to introduce themselves. So as we delve into drone autonomy Vision 2030, let's hear from the leaders who are not just witnessing the future, but are actively crafting it. Let's go ahead and get started. Let's start with Nitin.
Hello, everyone. This is Nitin. I am the founder and CEO of Flightbase. Flightbase, as many of you know, is the drone autonomy software platform. Happy to be on this panel.
Thanks, Nitin. Let's go to Eric.
All right, great. Thank you, Jason. I'm the chairman and CEO of Ondas and our Ondas Autonomous Systems business unit. Ondas Autonomous Systems has two subsidiaries. We have American Robotics based in Boston and Air Robotics based in Israel. We have two fully autonomous drone platforms. There's the Optimus system and the Iron Drone Raider. The Optimus system is a fully autonomous drone in a box, very sophisticated high-end system. It's got 24/7 operations due to the battery swapping capabilities. We also are able to swap payloads. And I'll just say very quickly, the Iron Drone Raider system is a counter-UAS platform. It's also a fully autonomous system. As it relates to this counter-UAS capabilities, we are a so-called interceptor drone, a very sophisticated system that's hitting the high end of the market for critical and civil infrastructure protection, and of course, defense and security markets.
Thanks, Eric. Glenn, welcome.
Thanks, Jason. Thanks, Nitin, to the team and the team for putting on this fantastic program again. And hello to everybody around the world. From Montreal, I'm Glenn Lynch. I'm the CEO of the Volatus Aerospace Group of companies. We're a next generation aviation company operating drones, helicopters, piloted helicopters, and piloted airplanes in basically providing innovative data intelligence services. We're a value-added reseller, and we're operating throughout Canada, the United States, and United Kingdom. Super happy to be here.
Glenn, thank you so much. We're so glad that you're here. Also like to welcome Alex.
Thank you. I'm Alex Patrikoff. I'm the co-founder and CEO of Sunflower Labs. We make an autonomous security drone, a drone in a box. Well, that's probably enough about me. Thank you.
Thanks, Alex. Appreciate that. And last but certainly not least, David.
Hey team, David Ings. I lead the robotics group at Drone Deploy. I came to Drone Deploy via an acquisition from a automation company called Rocos, where I was the CEO and co-founder. Drone Deploy digitizes the physical world, so we specialize in reality capture, and we do that both with aerial robotics and ground robotics. Great to be here.
I am so glad that you are here. I'm so glad that all of you are here. Now, look, this would not be a Vision 2030 panel without looking ahead to 2030. So If we're looking ahead to 2030, we're going to go around the horn with this. What transformative roles do you foresee for autonomous drones in society and industry? What breakthroughs are going to be pivotal in realizing this vision? Let's go ahead and start with Eric.
Okay, great. So, no question, autonomous technology is going to have a huge impact on the economy in a very positive way. I would focus on seeing an early impact here in infrastructure markets, as well as public safety and personal and enterprise security. These tools are very important for resiliency, the secure and efficient operation of critical infrastructure. And Jason, as it relates to breakthroughs, I think what we should be looking at as an industry is the fact that the technology innovation cycle that's been the bulk of the last 5-10 years or even longer for many of our companies is starting to show itself in reliability, particularly on the autonomous systems side of the industry. And what that's meaning is when we're deploying these technologies, they're becoming scalable, repeatable, and our customers are beginning to have better and better experiences, which of course is leading to revenue, and that revenue is driving scale, which can be reinvested in growth and even further deployment. So I think the reliability of the investments that have been made over the years is something to focus on.
Thank you, Eric. Let's go around the horn to David.
Yeah, I think the interesting part of the industry that we work in is really, as I mentioned, the digitizing the physical world, and customers have this increased appetite to have live connection to their digital twin. So for us, really, the automation technology means you don't have teams of people that have to drive, fly around to get to these locations. You literally just have the technology at the site continuously all the time. And so when this capture is happening, obviously a lot of us are talking about the automation of the flight component, and with dock drones and the pricing and the quality that's coming in now that we can actually leverage. But it's really the full pipeline. It's the fact that it's scheduled, it just happens, and it happens all the time, means customers have live access to continuous digitized data of physical sites. So construction, it's transformative. You have a continuous record of your progress. You can roll back at any time. We also work in the oil and gas and industrial areas. So capturing issues well before they actually cause outages in these types of environments are saving our customers millions. So this technology is really transformative in those specific industries to catch issues quickly and keep an update on your physical infrastructure.
David, thank you. Let's go to our host, Nitin.
Thanks, Jason. So 2030, there are a few applications that will definitely be the first ones to adopt this technology, and they will become mainstream. Like almost everybody in the security industry, mapping, inspection would be using autonomous drones, and these are drones without needing a lot of human intervention. So fully automated missions with baby loss and so on. So that is something I think we are kind of on that path, and that is very likely to happen. And I agree with what Eric mentioned about reliability, and kind of core for all of this to happen would be making sure that our systems are highly reliable. And by that time, we should have a lot of standardizations in place in terms of safety standards, in terms of compliance and certification standards, so that it becomes very easy for people to comply with those and have systems that are ready to be deployed at scale. So those are a few of the things that we think about.
So maybe controversial, maybe not. Alex, thoughts?
Oh, I see. Setting me up. Okay, fine. I'll bite. My vision for 2030 is that we have legally deployed everything we developed in 2020. So I honestly don't see that there is that much technological gap between where we want to be and where we are right now. I think the gap is mostly regulatory, various certifications, societal acceptance to some extent, maybe integrations of various kinds. But I would personally, I've been on panels like this in 2016 and 2017 when I talked about my vision for 2020, and I don't want to repeat the same things for 2030, but it is still consistent. I'll add one other thought. I think all drones should be autonomous. I don't understand why there are drones which are not autonomous. Like, I don't see why a human would do anything better than a drone which is reacting at 250 hertz. especially if you're talking about remote operations, especially if you're talking about BV laws. I think a human should be suggesting to the drone what it should do, but absolutely the drone should make the decision of how to do it and how to do it safely and how to react to different conditions. If the drones are going to be autonomous, then they should all be, for the most part, remote. I mean, yes, you can be next to it, but that would be more coincidental. But if you have an autonomous system, then it should by definition be remote. And if they are autonomous and they're remote, then by definition they need to have a landing station or some sort of a box. So really, like, I almost see that the current landscape of the drones where people are piloting them, that becomes more like, what you have horses for. So that's like a fun activity that you do, maybe for racing, maybe for sports. But for any type of work, it needs to be an autonomous, remotely operated drone that lives in a box, recharges or swaps batteries or whatever it needs to do and just does its job. So if we can make that happen by 2030, I'll be very happy. But quite honestly, we're doing most of that today, albeit with a bit more hurdles.
Appreciate that, Alex. Thanks for taking the bite out of that. Glenn, thoughts?
Mute.
Strike two. I concur completely with my colleagues on the panel here. Alex comment about autonomy. I think he's got it exactly right. I think we're looking at humans being on the loop rather than in the loop. I think that's probably nearer term than 2030. By 2030, I think we're going to be in a very different position than where we are right now, because we're going to be looking at both the enterprise class, the lighter, smaller drones, as well as the larger platforms that are being developed by many of our industry colleagues that are starting to enter service. I believe that the key strengths of the technologies, other than the environmental gains that we're offering right off the bat, our industry is an ESG champion. I think we understate that often, but we've got scalable, repeatable technologies. I think we're able to replace human beings, especially in jobs that are dull, dirty, and dangerous. So those are the categories that everything always falls into. I think we're, as an industry, aligned on that. I believe the three parts are the technology, the regulatory and certification, and the industry adoption and public acceptance. I also agree with Alex. I think the technology is either there or almost there. But I also believe, coming from kind of the piloted aircraft, commercial aircraft world, that our regulatory bodies around the world, for that matter, particularly in the markets we're serving, are moving quickly and catching up. And I think the things that we've been waiting for a number of years are, we're right there. We're going to see significant changes in the next, in the immediate future, that'll start to enable this technology. And I believe by the time we get to 2030, it's not just going to be a sector of the aviation aerospace industry. I think it's going to be starting to disrupt it entirely. I think you're going to see middle mile cargo, not just critical deliveries, but middle mile cargo will be handled with longer range, larger drones. And I think a lot of the activities, such as the critical infrastructure, oil and gas and power utilities, same scenario. I think we're going to have an operator monitoring remotely the activities that are happening on a scheduled or unscheduled basis to give people better quality data in real time, and in a way that's more friendly to our environment. So I think 2030 is tomorrow. It's coming fast.
Thank you, Glenn. So you brought this up, obviously. So we're here because of collaboration. You brought up the very quick moving regulatory landscape. So I'm going to go right back to you and go back around with this question. So with that rapidly evolving regulatory landscape, what collaborative approaches between industry and government are essential to fostering innovation while ensuring public safety and privacy?
Well, I think a lot of that's going on right now. If you think about how the industry started in most of the major markets, we had drones operating in a largely unregulated environment, and they put a cap on it. They contained us, so to speak, while they got control and learned a little bit about it. And many of the regulators, I think in most countries, the regulators are aviation regulators that are coming out of the certified world, and they treated drones very much like something other than an aircraft, which is interesting because by definition, they are an aircraft, just remotely piloted. And most countries, so far, I haven't found any that define an aircraft by where the pilot sits or by the level of autonomy. So I think government is actually proactively engaged with the industry to make some progress. I think CxO is making some real progress with the RPAS working groups. And I think the member states are following along pretty well. We've got some real industry leaders like Nitin putting together sessions like this that are helping bring our industry closer together. And, you know, if I was a betting man right now, we've got regulators from various countries around the world that are listening into this because it's more than just a job. People are engaging. If I look in Canada specifically, we have companies that are being contracted by the federal government of Canada to actually go through operational testing using their platforms to actually help them become, as a regulator, more familiar with the operation of these remote technologies to be able to help accelerate and improve the regulatory process. So I think those partnerships are happening now. I think it's far less adversarial. I think we're learning more about one another. And I believe that the regulators in industry are in lockstep in terms of seeing the benefits of our technology. Not to say that we have the same interest in the process. Obviously, their interest in regulation is protecting public safety, which I think we're all conscious of just as responsible operators. But fundamentally, I think that collaboration is happening now.
Thanks, Clinton. I agree. Alex, to you.
Do I have to say something controversial again?
No, maybe.
I mean, I hear people saying how the regulations are moving fast, but I don't feel it. So Part 107 came out in 2016, and Part 107 only allows visual line of sight operations. So for the last 8 years, the FAA has been issuing waivers for everything, essentially, right? So everybody who wants to do any operations, it's just a waiver after waiver. It's stacks of paperwork. I understand Part 108 is coming. I've heard that before. Maybe we'll see an NPRM this year. That means it'll be another 18 months after that. It's actually law. So I feel like that's way too slow. Like there's nothing that's killing this industry more than American, European regulations. So if it wasn't for that, companies like, well, all of us here could be moving 10 times faster, doing 10 times cooler things. And if somebody wants to see sort of what the future of drones looks like, take a look at China, right? That's what the future looks like. They are doing stuff in China that we're all are wishing we can do here, including autonomous operations, much easier scale deployments. And we're here filling out 250 pages of paperwork for every site. So that's how I feel. Take it or leave it. But yeah, I honestly feel that we could be doing much better if we want this industry to thrive.
Alex, thank you. Well, at least the FAA is approving them a little faster today. Paperwork doesn't change. Nitin, to you, thoughts?
Okay. Thanks. No, we have worked with regulators in almost, I think, 15 different countries so far, right from Japan, Korea, in the Middle East, and all the way to US and Mexico. What we have kind of, we have developed some sort of empathy for the regulators. So I know as innovators, we feel kind of that they are not really moving fast enough. They should be moving fast enough and all of that. But when you look at things from the point of view of regulators, right? So they are looking at the risk, right? So while yes, everything works maybe 99% of the time, but that 1% of the time when something goes wrong, then what do you do? And that is their concern, right? So we have started kind of developing that empathy for these regulators and figuring out, okay, how can we help them get that conviction in the technology, or what else can we do to build that safety case? And also now working with so many different regulators, we have been trying to put together sort of case studies and enough data so that we can use that data from one regulator and use it to convince the other regulator that, see, this has already been done and it has already been used in this geography. Can we learn something from here and apply it to another geography? So some of these things have helped, and what we have seen is they are also genuinely interested in moving forward because they're getting a lot of backlash. So they also understand that, yes, we need to move forward, but we as an industry have to guide them. We as an industry have to go to them with some kind of recommendations, data, with some sort of safety cases and all of that, so that they are convinced that they are taking good decisions in the interest of safety. So So I think we have an important role to play to come up with a lot of these things and work closely with them to move this industry forward.
And thank you. David, thoughts?
Yeah, I mean, there's no question there's pressure on the regulators globally. I just like to flip it around, and a lot of the work we're doing with our customers is to say the regulation will become more simple. We don't know exactly what their timeline is going to be. We don't know exactly what the requirements are going to be in that scenario. But we have customers that are implementing, technology like dock drones at construction sites, and facing the fact that in the interim, they still need a pilot for safety that's not BVLOS when they don't have a waiver. And what we're getting the feedback is these customers are saying, we can never go back to a human piloted scenario where somebody rocks up with a drone, puts in the SD card, charges it. And we have this hilarious story where our CEO was on site with a customer, about to fly, and then they forgot the SD card. Back they go to the office, grab the SD card, and then they didn't have the right batteries with them. That all of that messy technology goes away when you have the dock drone and the autonomy components put in place. The other thing is, where is the expert? So in our situation, it's not just a Part 107 pilot. You also need somebody that understands photogrammetry. What is the site I'm trying to capture? What are the settings I need in order to capture a really high resolution digital footprint? When you start using technology like this, that expert can be remote. That expert can actually put those settings into the software, and then really the pilot is really just the safety pilot at the site. So you don't have an expert traveling to the site to set that up. That's all managed remotely. So we have customers telling us they can never go back. They are now absolutely hooked on dock drone as a technology. They absolutely, before their BVLOS waivers kick in, they are going to have safety, pilots at the sites, but they're unlocking a huge amount of value. But it's not the full value yet, but they're already unlocking a huge amount of value with this first wave of technology. So we're encouraging customers to do that, understand the technology, understand the risks, understand the protocols, and then migrating towards that future. And yes, we don't have full control over the regulators, and we'll go on that journey with the regulators. But then they also get to see the operations very close to what it's going to look like in that future state.
David, thank you. You unlocked another question, but I'm not going to get to it right now. I want to hear from Eric.
All right, great. And I think we've covered this fairly well, and I would say I agree with all the panelists. But I would make the point that we have seen, I believe, very significant regulatory progress, and in the sense that the headwinds are lessening, right? The progress we've made both on the regulatory side, but also as operators, the experience. And again, getting back to the technology platforms, in particular autonomous platforms, the experience improving reliability is beginning to create a situation where the headwinds are lessening. And the fact is, there's been more BVLOS waivers approvals and flights than we've ever seen in say years, right? So we're on this pretty steep curve here with in terms of operations. But I'd also add one thing, Jason, because you started the question, you were talking more broadly about government. Of course, regulatory is part of that. What I'd want to highlight for the conversation here is that we're seeing a lot of activity from state and local governments and agencies, like departments of transportation, for example, but also federal government bodies who are being customers, right? And they're spending a lot of money, and that spending growth is becoming substantial. And I think that's adding a significant tailwind to the sector that I think we need to start paying attention to and catering to, because there's a tremendous amount of value. This is getting back to the first question for critical infrastructure operators, for example, for public safety, and the more experience we get and the more we're able to demonstrate that value, the more the industry is going to grow.
Eric, thank you. So this word has come up several times, right? Gaps, right? Standards. So let's go back around the horn and just briefly, because we have a lot of questions. We actually have some questions coming in, which is amazing. So can we identify what are those gaps in the global standards for these types of operations, and how can you as industry leaders unite to establish and harmonize those standards? Let's go back to Eric.
I'm sorry, Jason. You're talking about gaps in standards?
Yes.
Okay. I'm going to defer on that because I'm not going to be the expert in the panel on this.
Okay. No problem. Let's go to, do we have a volunteer? No volunteers. That's no fun. All right. Well, I'm gonna move to a question that I actually want to ask then. So, and I've heard this a couple times. I actually jumped into a networking session and talked to 2 different people just for fun. And this was their common question. So I'm going to ask it. And it's been on your list. So you're going to see it. And I think you'll all have a take on it. So we'll start again with you, Eric. So how will the role of a drone operator transform with advancing autonomy? And what steps are you taking to elevate their skills to adapt to this new landscape?
That's a great question. So I think at its core, you're solving this autonomy with technology, and it's really the complementary technologies you put around your autonomous systems. And I would point to firstly is the detect and avoid technology. So I think as we integrate these capabilities, the ability to scale with customers just grows significantly. And then, of course, as we're getting the scale, I'm not sure if this is where you expected me to take it, but more flights, more experience with customers, we begin to get into more advanced data solutions, right? So that's the data analytics side of it, and that's where we see a tremendous amount of opportunity to add value, but also upskilling in terms of building the talent internally.
That's exactly where I wanted you to take it. So thank you. David, your thoughts?
Okay.
Yeah, I guess the question with each leap of technology is, are we simplifying the technology or are we making life harder at the end of the day? And if you take the previous generation of technology with our customers again, and oil and gas and construction, they had a big choice to make around obviously software, and then independently what hardware they're going to choose. So we choose these drones, we choose the software package that can coordinate these drones. And then their third choice was really, do they train a fleet of pilots, or do they outsource that to the service provider? And I'm particularly interested to see what happens to that service provider ecosystem. So firstly, the question is, is it going to be simplified? And I think once things like the dock drones are set up, it is simplified. There's less things to do. There's less things to think about. There's less things to worry about. Obviously, during the flight, there are some, further concerns, really around how you manage BV loss. But the question for me is, what does the ecosystem evolve in terms of service providers? So let's assume there's going to be a significant reduction in people jumping in vehicles and traveling to locations with drones and flying. I think we're all agreeing that that's, going to not be eliminated, but it's going to drop off very significantly. So the question is then, what happens to those service providers? Will they then set up those operation centers where they're actually saying to the customer, we can have redundant network connectivity, we can have a suite of air safety technologies that we implement, we have protocols and processes. So is there going to be a trend to go back to more service providers and not trying to train your fleet, or are you going to have your own operation center actually manage these types of programs? So I think that ecosystem, we're not only just evolving as a software hardware ecosystem, but I think the service provider industry is going to have a significant change over the next few years, and that's going to be interesting in how that changes.
I agree, David. That will be very interesting. Nitin, what are your thoughts?
Right. So as Glenn mentioned earlier, right? So we are going from human in the loop towards human on the loop. So what basically that means is that with every automation technology, we are always removing people from the loop that they were earlier in and moving them to a loop above it. So they come outside of that initial loop, but then of course there are opportunities to again remove them from that loop and bring them one step above that loop again. So there are always kind of lot of nested loops, and we are continuously trying to remove ourselves from lower loops and moving towards higher loops, right? So for example, we used to have horse cars, and then we got to cars, and now we are getting to autonomous cars, and then maybe something else. So with each step, we are reducing human effort, and human effort is now being utilized for a larger purpose, for something bigger. So today, operators are maybe operating a single drone, but with autonomous systems, maybe you need only one operator for a few tens of drones just to supervise that, or to set some high-level goals and to look at the data, make sure everything is getting done. So of course, with every automation technology, we need to upskill ourselves. We need to kind of rewire ourselves so that we are not stuck in that inner loop. We are moving towards that outer loop. And for that, upskilling, training, all these things will become very important. And today we announced the launch of Flight Base Academy, which is a step in that direction, where we are kind of changing the conversation from how to fly a drone towards like how to set up command centers or how to build like fully automated workflows and so on.
And thank you. Alex, do you have thoughts on this one?
I agree with everyone here. I'll go a step further as usual. There shouldn't be drone pilots. There shouldn't be operators of drones. There really should just be consumers of the data that the drone provides. And then there's probably some support, which is necessary. But I think that today's situation where if you wanted to fly a drone, so if I came to your party and I flew a drone and took some pictures, I can do that basically without any regulations. And then if I charge you $1 for those pictures, I need it to be a Part 107 certified pilot. I find that distinction to be quite interesting. But I also think that like almost nothing that you would learn as a Part 107 pilot, or almost nothing that that is being tested there, should be relevant to operating a drone, right? Drone should not be flying if it's not allowed to. So you shouldn't need to read sectional charts. The drone knows where it is. It knows it can't fly here, end of story. The drone should know the weather, and you should not fly if the weather is bad, right? You don't need to know what the cold front will do. You don't need to know what, convective fog means or anything like that. Like, it should just be taken care of. All you really are doing as an operator today, right, is that you're directing the drone to go somewhere, take pictures of video, collect whatever sensor data that you need. That's the data that you need for construction purposes, for security, for anything else. That's what you want. The drone should assure safety for all of that operations without you having really any choice in that matter, unless, of course, there are some special circumstances where you're flying, drones in. But for the most part, for 99% of people, I feel that they're consumers of what the drone produces. They're not actually operators. It's like a driverless car, right? A driverless car should not have a driver. It should not have a remote driver. It should not have a driver. Like a driverless car is a box that takes it to a place, right? The end of story. So a drone really is a flying thing that does something for you. So I would say that would be my point of view. This.
Alex, thanks for taking it a step further and introducing a new level of drone middle management. Glenn, thoughts? Oh, muted
One
again.
more time.
Oh, one more time. Last time.
It's got to be a Saturday. I'm following a lot of the comments that are coming in while my colleagues are speaking, and it's quite interesting to see them. I see everybody's point of view here as being valid, but from a different perspective. When we're looking at, I think we're a long time before the humans are completely off of the loop. I do think we'll get there. I truly do. But at this moment in time, the lines of code are written by human beings, and ultimately, computers have glitches, and that's part of the reason that people are in the loop. And to some respect, when we start talking large scale versus very localized, in our case, for example, the concept of the remote operations center, it's really that's part of the Volatus Aerospace script. I don't like talking very much about our company, but that's where we are right now, trying to centralize the operation of our remotely operated drones, along with the oversight of our piloted helicopters and aircraft, into one center, and then bridging the gap between them, and then slowly replacing, a 2,000-pound piloted platform with a 100-kilogram drone capable of doing the same thing. The areas that we can deal with this stuff today are places like offshore, North Sea operations. We've got drones operating in the North Sea and offshore. We've got Arctic regions. We've got, restricted airspace around wildfire. So the remote operation, it's a time that we're doing more than dipping our toe into the water, I think, as an industry. I think drones are actually finding their way there now. People are discovering that, when a helicopter goes down, that's a really bad thing. There's human beings that are at risk in the air and on the ground. But when we lose an air vehicle with nobody on board and a very small footprint overall, there's major advantages to that. I think that training infrastructure, training is absolutely key. This is a new industry. It's not like buying a business jet and looking at the, tens of thousands of business jets that are out there. A lot of this technology is new, and we're learning what being an operator means. today that's a truck, a drone, and an operator with a ground control station, with the exception of technologies like Alex and Eric's for certain. But fundamentally, we're still talking about large-scale operations where we're looking at large-scale power lines, where we're dealing with 1,000 kilometers instead of 4 kilometers or 5 or 6 miles type of thing. I believe we're now going from an environment where it takes us years to train a pilot to weeks to months to train an operator, because really, as Alex pointed out earlier, the aircraft itself is taking care of itself and understands the airspace. Some of the technologies that are out there and available today actually analyze the changing conditions in that airspace. So I think it's realistic that pilots will eventually disappear as we know them today. I suspect they won't disappear in my lifetime. They won't be off the loop entirely, but I do think that's where we're headed. And I do think there's also technologies where that is the case. If we look at the deployment of Alex's technologies and Eric's technologies, some of those things can be autonomously triggered, autonomously operated. The data sorts itself out autonomously. The main reason that we have a human in the loop is from a regulatory confidence monitoring standpoint back on the loop. But I do think we're going to change completely what we view as being a pilot, and where they're going to become more an operator, and their job is more, how do we interface and deliver instructions and missions to the drone as opposed to actually manipulating the drone. So we're getting there, but we've got a ways to go yet. But again, you look at the differing opinions here. Some of those differing opinions have to do with the level of technologies that are actually being provided by those companies today in the markets they're serving. When I look at large scale oil, sorry, go ahead.
No, Glenn, I thought you were wrapping up. I just wanted to maybe further support what you're saying. I think it's very insightful, and we are providing fully autonomous platforms, and our strategy is to deploy these as fleets for security and inspection at critical infrastructure, field area operations for utilities, oil and gas operators. But I want to make a plug similar to what you're saying, Glenn, for the drone service operator. And I think the roles really evolve when you're deploying this autonomous technology. You're going to customers typically who are spending a lot of money and have many different use cases for drones, and having that expertise in the field to be able to do and architect multiple solutions is really invaluable. And I think that's a really important part of the customer relationship, and really taking the solutions and your product roadmap to be as valuable as it can be for the customers. So I think for as you're saying, it's going to evolve, right? The value and the day-to-day operations of the people in the field, but I think you're going to still need a lot of people.
I guess just to clarify my angle here, I don't want to say that an autonomous drone doesn't mean no human can interact with it. I'm just saying no human has to be interacting with it. In a panel earlier today, they talked about European regulations. They talked that essentially in European regulations, there is a provision for what to do in the situation of a comlink loss, right? So if you're losing communication with your drone, your remote operator by definition can't do anything, right? So you need to provision a system to be able to operate safely in those conditions already. And so happens that, I forgot the exact percentage, but it's high double-digit percentages of any sort of drone incidents that happen is a comlink loss, right? So by sort of insisting that there is a remote operator in charge, and then saying that half of the times the remote operator can't do anything, right? We sort of define that point here as well. And then just the last thought I'll add is like in terms of technology and code and not being trusted, like we used to have elevator operators too, right? And some time went by and people said, you know what, I can push this button myself and it will do the same thing. Now, doesn't mean there's no problems in elevators. Elevators get stuck. There's all sorts of problems, but then you push another button and you talk to another person, in that situation, and they come and they get and they help you out. So I think the drones are much more on that track, right? We're still in there is an elevator operator sort of mode, but the reality is that operator really is a support person that's needed 1% or a fraction of a percent of the time, sometime in the future.
If I can add something, Jason, you asked a question earlier about gaps in standardization and procedures and so on. I think one of the reasons that we're having challenges even responding to that, and why nobody kind of popped out of their seat to answer it, is because it really depends on what we're talking about, right? The standards of operation of autonomous drone-in-the-box solutions is very different from the operation of an operator running a drone down a power line, let's say. But I do think those gaps are there, and they're a combination of technology gaps and standard operating procedures that align with both, aviation safety or flight safety in general, data integrity, and ultimately the regulatory compliance requirements. And I watched somebody made a comment in the chat there a minute ago about kind of the legal viability of certain elements. When we take the human completely out of the loop, one of the challenges we have is the lawyers have nobody to yell at, right? And that is actually an issue. It's one of the biggest challenges right now with cross-border operations. We can overcome certain things, but other things become very difficult, because if you drive your car across the border and you do something wrong, there's somebody that the Border Patrol can grab a hold of and hold accountable. But autonomous vessels going back and forth, it gets complicated now. It gets complicated to understand who's responsible and where that person is, and how do we enforce that if they're not on sovereign land. So I think that subject deserved a comment. I just needed to think a little bit about it before we did it, because it's a big subject, and I think that's why you didn't get the answers there.
I appreciate that. Yeah, I reading the question, I was like, wow, yeah, that was very non-specific, a little too general. So that was my bad. So we're actually getting down to sort of the end here. I was looking to see if there were any questions that popped into our Q&A section. Seeing none, I did see there was a great conversation. Thank you. Keep that conversation going. We have panelists talking to you. We have other people all over the globe talking. This is amazing. I wanted to maybe take the last question, and if we could do it sort of a lightning rounds way, like, I want to talk about money. Everyone loves to talk about money. So can we just sort of like very quickly, what are the economic ripple effects of autonomous drones? So we're just going to answer that in whatever way style you would like to. Well, let's do it fairly quickly since we have 2 minutes left. So everyone gets 30 seconds. Let's start with Eric. You're on the clock.
Jason, it's a simple. I think it's a simple analysis from an economic standpoint. Is you're taking the labor out, and when you're introducing technology that is very, very valuable, and the customer has high ROI, and it's a technology-driven platform and service, it should have very high margins. So I think if you look at the return on investment, return on product development, vis-a-vis other service delivery models, there's no comparison. It's a much higher return.
Awesome, Eric. Thank you, David.
Yeah, I think the interesting thing at the moment, because of the human cost factor, is there's a limit in terms of what currently you can get ROI on using these types of aerial vehicles. So at the moment, you're saying, hey, only if this thing is worth more than this value will we do it. And so when that cost comes down and that human factor comes down, there will be more things that we can do that now become viable. So it's not just a question of we're going to be doing the same things on the same frequency, but it's going to cost us less money. There's actually new use cases and much higher frequency that can actually start kicking in. So I think that's the big shift that we're starting to see, is those new use cases that now become viable. And similar happened when the price of these units came down. So we're going to see that next wave of productivity kick in for new applications.
David, thank you. I'm going to jump to Glenn.
So I think unit economics are a big subject, and I think there's direct and indirect. When we look at drone cargo delivery today, or drone delivery, the unit economics are difficult because we're carrying a small amount of payload relative to the operating costs. As those unit economics change with larger drones carrying more product at lower cost, that's a very different model. On the I think where the direct has more to do with pulling the human labor out, moving to a many to one or many to many scenario. That's where the unit economics will really gain. But more importantly is the indirect impact, right? every year, as I hope not, but I'm expecting we're going to see this year, like last year, the consequences of the environmental change. And basically these drones and the operation of these drones do tremendous things to improve our planet. And the payback on that could be spelled out in trillions of dollars of potential property or potential profit as we continue to move forward. So I really think it's a big subject, Jason, one probably worthy of an entire conversation.
Completely agree. And I put it as a lightning round. So, Alex.
I mean, what's going to happen to the economy is going to be less determined by what drones do, but maybe more determined by what driverless vehicles and AI and other things will do to a large effect. So the drones will be a fraction of that. But I think just generally what humans should be doing is going to change, right? So if humans are doing menial tasks, which can be easily replaced by some kind of autonomy or by some kind of an AI, those jobs are going to shift, and those humans will find better, higher level things to do, right? So I think we should always strive to keep ahead of whatever technology is doing for us, right? So it's a repeat of the Industrial Revolution, but at a new level. And I think it's ultimately good for humanity. It's ultimately good for all of the economies that people are put to better use than what 3 lines of code and the drone is going to do for you.
Amen.
Thank you. Let's end with our host, Nitin. Your thoughts on this, and then we'll close.
Sure. So we like to think of it in 2 parts. I think some of the other panelists already touched upon those. So one is a set of applications that are kind of already being done, but they are not being done in a very efficient manner. So with autonomous drones, we will be able to make them much more efficient. And we are already now beginning to get some sort of ROI calculations working with our customers. So this has happened only recently, that now some solid numbers have started to come in, where we can clearly see that earlier this kind of work used to take so much cost, and now we are able to see significant reduction in that cost due to use of autonomous technology. And this year, I'm sure we'll have many more case studies with those numbers published. So that is one set of applications. The second set of applications is where those were just not possible. For example, think of emergency response or servicing alarms. So those are kind of things that were very expensive, and so nobody was even kind of doing it. So these are applications that will get unlocked because of this technology, and new value will be generated, which was earlier just not there. So that will be really fascinating, really interesting. I think David also mentioned about that. So those are the 2 kind of categories. One is efficiency, and one is kind of unlocking new value, which did not just exist.
So you've heard it here, folks. These are the industry leaders that are going to be shaping our vision of 2030. They're going to be shaping this through, and there are many of us. So thank you so much for spending time with us today. Thank you to our sponsors. Thank you to each one of the panelists. I am humbled just being here, being able to host this session. So thank you so much. We will take it off the stage. We'll take it back to the host. Thank you so much. And we will see you next time. So thank you, everyone. Bye now.
Thanks, everyone.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.